The dust cloud rose behind the wagon as Theresa Sullivan arrived at the Triple Creek Ranch in Nevada, her hands trembling as she clutched the single carpet bag containing everything she owned, knowing her father had gambled away not just his money but her entire future. The summer heat of 1876 bore down mercilessly as the hired driver pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a sprawling ranch house that seemed to stretch across the horizon. Theresa was 20 years old, and 3 days ago her father had confessed through tears and whiskey breath that he owed Wesley Crawford $15,000, a sum so astronomical it might as well have been $1 million. Her father owned nothing of value except the small mercantile in Carlin that was already mortgaged to the bank. So he had offered the only thing he thought might satisfy the debt, his daughter. The shame had burned through Theresa like wildfire. She had always known her father enjoyed cards and drink more than was proper, but she had never imagined it would come to this. Her mother had died 5 years prior from pneumonia, and since then, her father had spiraled slowly downward. Still, she loved him. When he had explained with shaking hands that Wesley Crawford had agreed to take her as payment, that she would work as his housekeeper and eventually become his wife, she had felt her world collapse. But what choice did she have? If she refused, her father would likely be killed by Crawford's men, or worse, by the other creditors who circled like vultures. The driver, a grizzled man who had not spoken a single word during the 30-mile journey from Carlin, now gestured for her to climb down. Theresa took a deep breath, smoothed her faded blue dress, and descended. Her boots hit the packed earth with a soft thud, and she stood there, carpetbag in hand, feeling like livestock delivered to market. The ranch house door opened and a man stepped out onto the wide porch. Theresa's breath caught despite herself. Wesley Crawford was not what she had expected. She had imagined someone older, harder, perhaps cruel-looking. Instead, the man who stood before her appeared to be in his late 20s, tall and lean with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were a startling gray-blue, like storm clouds over the desert, and they studied her with an expression she could not quite read. He wore simple ranch clothes, a worn cotton shirt rolled up at the sleeves, dark trousers, and boots that had clearly seen years of hard work. There was nothing ostentatious about him, nothing that suggested the wealth she knew he must possess to own a spread this size. Wesley descended the porch steps slowly, his gaze never leaving her face. When he reached her, he stopped a respectful distance away. The driver had already turned the wagon around and was heading back down the long road, leaving her truly alone with this stranger. "Miss Sullivan," Wesley said, his voice low and measured. It was not unkind. "Mr. Crawford," she replied, forcing herself to meet his eyes. She would not cower, no matter how frightened she felt. He looked at her for a long moment, and something flickered across his face, anger perhaps, or frustration, though she sensed it was not directed at her. Finally, he spoke again, and his words were barely above a whisper. "You owe me nothing." Theresa blinked, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon." Wesley took a step closer, and she instinctively tensed, but he made no move to touch her. "You owe me nothing," he repeated, louder this time. "Your father's debt is his own, not yours. You are not property to be traded, Miss Sullivan, and I will not treat you as such." She stared at him, confusion and disbelief warring within her. "But my father said you agreed to this arrangement, that you would cancel his debt if I came to work for you and eventually become your wife." A muscle ticked in Wesley's jaw. "Your father is a desperate man who made promises on your behalf without my consent or knowledge of the true terms. When he came to me last week, he said his daughter was willing to work off his debt as my housekeeper. He said nothing about forcing you into marriage, and I made no such demand. I need help around the ranch, and I agreed to reduce his debt in exchange for honest work. That is all. But he told me. Theresa trailed off, her mind reeling. Had her father lied? Or had he simply assumed that Wesley would expect more? Wesley's expression softened slightly. Your father likely heard what he wanted to hear, or perhaps he embellished the truth to ensure you would come. Desperate men do desperate things, Miss Sullivan, but I want to be clear with you now. You are welcome to stay and work if you choose, and I will pay you fair wages. Your father's debt will be reduced according to your work, but slowly, over time, as would be reasonable. If you wish to leave, I will arrange transport back to Carlin immediately. The choice is yours. Theresa felt tears prick her eyes, though she blinked them back furiously. If I leave, my father will still owe you money he cannot possibly repay. That is between him and me, Wesley said firmly. It is not your burden to bear. She looked down at her worn boots, her mind racing. The truth was, she had nowhere else to go. The small room above her father's mercantile was not truly a home, and her father's drinking had made life there increasingly unbearable. At least here, she might have a chance at honest work and dignity. And this man, this rancher who supposedly held her father's fate in his hands, was offering her freedom. She lifted her gaze back to his face. I would like to stay and work, Mr. Crawford, not because I must, but because I choose to. Something that might have been relief crossed Wesley's features. Then welcome to Triple Creek Ranch, Miss Sullivan. Let me show you where you will be staying, and then I will introduce you to the rest of the household. He picked up her carpet bag before she could protest and led her toward the house. The ranch stretched out in all directions, with corrals holding horses, a large barn, several outbuildings, and what looked like bunkhouses for ranch hands. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing across the rolling landscape, their forms wavering in the heat. Inside, the house was surprisingly well kept, though it clearly lacked a woman's touch. The furniture was sturdy but plain, the floors swept clean but unadorned. Wesley led her through a comfortable sitting room and down a hallway to a small bedroom at the back of the house. This will be your room, he said, setting her bag on the simple bed. It has a window that catches the morning light and a door that locks from the inside. You will have complete privacy. Theresa looked around the modest space. It was small but clean, with a bed, a washstand, a chest of drawers, and a single chair by the window. It was more than she had expected. Thank you, she said quietly. Wesley nodded and stepped back into the hallway. Take whatever time you need to settle in. When you are ready, come to the kitchen and I will introduce you to Rosa. She is my cook and has been with me since I started this ranch 5 years ago. She will help you learn the routines of the household. How many people live here? Theresa asked. Just myself in the main house, now you. And Rosa comes daily but lives in town with her family. I have 6 ranch hands who stay in the bunkhouse and take their meals there. You would not be responsible for cooking for them, only for maintaining the main house and preparing meals for yourself, me, and any guests who might visit. Rosa does most of the cooking currently, but she could use help with the cleaning and laundry. It sounded like reasonable work, far less daunting than Theresa had feared. I can do that. I believe you can, Wesley said. Then, with a slight nod, he left her alone. Theresa sat down on the bed, her legs suddenly weak. The past few days had been a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty, and now she found herself in the home of a stranger who had just told her she owed him nothing. It seemed too good to be true, and yet Wesley Crawford had spoken with such sincerity that she found herself believing him. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 2 spare dresses in the small wardrobe and placing her mother's Bible on the bedside table. It was the only thing of value she owned, and she touched its worn cover gently, wishing her mother were here to guide her. After washing her face and hands in the basin and repinning her dark blonde hair, Theresa made her way to the kitchen. The house was quiet, and she found the kitchen easily. A large, airy room with a cast-iron stove, a long wooden table, and shelves lined with dishes and supplies. A round woman with warm brown skin and graying black hair was stirring a pot on the stove. She looked up when Theresa entered and broke into a wide smile. "You must be Theresa," she said in accented English. "I am Rosa Mendoza. Welcome, welcome." Rosa's warmth was immediate and genuine, and Theresa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Thank you. Mr. Crawford said you would help me learn the routines here." Of course," Rosa said, waving her to the table. "But first you must be hungry from your journey. Sit." Theresa obeyed, and Rosa placed a bowl of hearty stew and fresh bread before her. The food smelled delicious, and Theresa realized she had not eaten since dawn. As she ate, Rosa chattered happily about the ranch, about Wesley, and about the work that needed doing. "Mr. Wesley is a good man," Rosa said firmly. "Fair and kind. He took me in when my husband died and gave me work when no one else would hire a widow with 6 children. He pays me more than I could earn anywhere else, and he never raises his voice or his hand." Theresa absorbed this information, watching Rosa's animated face. "How long have you worked for him?" 5 years, since the beginning. He built this ranch from nothing, you know. He came here with money he earned working cattle drives up north, bought this land, and worked like a demon to make it succeed. Now he has one of the best herds in Nevada, and buyers come from California to purchase his stock. "Why did he agree to my father's arrangement?" Theresa asked quietly. "He must have known what my father intended." Rosa's expression sobered. "Your father came to him in desperation. He owed money to some very bad men, not just to Mr. Wesley. Mr. Wesley is not a man who turns away someone in need, even when perhaps he should. He thought he could help your father by giving him a way to work off the debt honestly. I think he did not realize how your father would present it to you. He told me I was being sent as payment, that I would have no choice but to marry Mr. Crawford eventually." Rosa clucked her tongue disapprovingly. "Your father is a fool, though I say it without malice. Mr. Wesley would never force a woman into marriage. He is too honorable for that." Theresa finished her stew, feeling better with food in her stomach. "What exactly will I be doing here?" "Helping me keep this big house clean, doing laundry, mending clothes, helping with meals when needed. Mr. Wesley is not demanding. He works long hours on the ranch and is often too tired to care much about anything beyond basic comfort. But the house needs a woman's touch, and I am not as young as I once was. The work will keep you busy, but not break you." Over the following weeks, Theresa settled into a routine at Triple Creek Ranch. She rose early, helped Rosa prepare breakfast, cleaned the house, did laundry, mended clothes, and helped with supper. The work was honest and satisfying, and she found herself taking pride in making the house more comfortable. She sewed new curtains for the sitting room from fabric Wesley purchased for her in town, polished the furniture until it gleamed, and planted herbs in a small garden by the kitchen door. Wesley was considerate and polite, treating her with respect and keeping a proper distance. They saw each other primarily at meals, which were quiet affairs where they made stilted conversation about the weather, the ranch, and neutral topics. He seemed almost shy around her, as if unsure how to behave, and she found this endearing despite herself. She learned more about him through observation and through Rosa's stories. He was an excellent horseman, fair with his ranch hands, and deeply knowledgeable about cattle and land management. He had grown up on a ranch in Texas, left after his parents died of fever, and spent years working cattle drives before saving enough to start his own spread. He was 28 years old, had never been married, and according to Rosa, had never shown serious interest in any woman, much to the disappointment of several eligible ladies in Carlin. "He is too focused on his work," Rosa said one afternoon as she and Theresa kneaded bread dough. "He thinks building a successful ranch is enough, but a man needs more than cattle to warm his bed." Theresa felt her cheeks flush at the frank statement. Perhaps he has not found the right woman. "Perhaps the right woman has been under his nose and he is too stubborn to see it," Rosa said with a meaningful look. Theresa quickly changed the subject. She could not afford to think of Wesley Crawford as anything more than her employer. Yes, he was handsome, and yes, he had been nothing but kind and honorable, but she was here because of her father's debt, however much Wesley might claim otherwise. Any feelings beyond gratitude would be foolish and dangerous. Still, she could not help but notice small things. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, which was rare but genuine. The way he always thanked her for meals, even though it was her job to help prepare them. The way he once spent an entire afternoon repairing a broken shutter on her bedroom window without being asked. The way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not watching, his expression unguarded and almost longing. One evening in late August, nearly 2 months after her arrival, Theresa was sitting on the front porch enjoying the cooler air after a blazing hot day. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and the ranch was settling into its evening quiet. Wesley emerged from the barn and walked toward the house. When he saw her on the porch, he hesitated, then climbed the steps to join her. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "It is your porch," she said with a slight smile. He settled into the chair beside hers, stretching out his long legs with a sigh. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset. "You have made a difference here," Wesley said finally. "The house feels like a home now, not just a place to sleep between work." "Thank you. I have tried to earn my keep." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "You have more than earned it. I want you to know that your father's debt has been reduced by half. At this rate, it will be settled within another 6 months." Theresa felt a mix of relief and something else she could not quite name, anxiety perhaps. "And then I will have no reason to stay." "You will always have a reason to stay if you wish it," Wesley said quietly. "I would like you to consider staying on as a permanent employee, not tied to your father's debt. You would receive full wages and have a place here for as long as you want it." She studied his face in the fading light. "Why? You could hire anyone." "Because you are good at what you do." "Because Rosa adores you, because I—" He trailed off, then cleared his throat. "Because I have come to value your presence here." Her heart beat faster, but she kept her voice steady. "I have come to value being here." They lapsed into silence again, but it felt charged now, full of unspoken words. Finally, Wesley stood. "Good night, Miss Sullivan." "Good night, Mr. Crawford." He paused at the door, looking back at her. "Would you consider calling me Wesley? Mr. Crawford makes me feel like an old man." She smiled. "Only if you call me Theresa." "Theresa," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt on his tongue. Then he nodded and went inside. Theresa sat on the porch until the stars emerged, her mind whirling. Something was shifting between them, something that both thrilled and terrified her. The next few weeks brought a subtle change in their interactions. They began to talk more freely at meals, sharing stories from their pasts, discussing books they had read, and debating everything from politics to the best way to train a horse. Wesley had a sharp intelligence and a dry sense of humor that emerged once he relaxed, and Theresa found herself laughing more than she had in years. He began teaching her to ride properly. She had ridden before, but only old plow horses at a sedate walk. Wesley put her on a gentle mare named Daisy and showed her how to truly handle a horse, how to post in the saddle, how to canter across the open range. Those riding lessons became the highlight of her week, not just because she loved the freedom of riding, but because of the time spent with Wesley, his hand steadying her ankle as he adjusted her stirrup, his voice patient as he explained techniques, his rare smile when she succeeded. One afternoon in September, they rode out farther than usual, to a spot where a small creek wound through a grove of cottonwood trees. It was an oasis in the arid landscape, cool and green and peaceful. They dismounted and let the horses drink while they sat on the creek bank. "This is my favorite place on the ranch," Wesley said. "I come here when I need to think." "It is beautiful," Theresa agreed, trailing her fingers in the cool water. "Theresa, I need to tell you something," Wesley said, his voice suddenly serious. She turned to look at him, her heart beginning to race. "These past months, having you here, it has changed everything for me. I have always been content with my ranch, with my work, but now I realize I was just existing, not truly living. You have brought something into my life that I did not know was missing." "Wesley," she breathed. "Let me finish," he said gently. "I know you came here under false pretenses because of your father's foolishness. I know you might feel obligated to me because of that debt, however much I have tried to make clear that you are not. But I need you to know that my feelings for you have nothing to do with any arrangement or debt. I have come to care for you deeply, Theresa. More than care for you, if I am honest. I think I am falling in love with you." Theresa felt tears spring to her eyes. "I have been trying so hard not to feel anything for you beyond gratitude." "And have you succeeded?" he asked, his gray-blue eyes searching hers. "No," she whispered. "I have failed completely. I think I have been falling in love with you since the moment you told me I owed you nothing." Wesley reached out and gently cupped her face in his hand, his touch tender and questioning. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," she said, and then his lips were on hers, soft and warm and perfect. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but as she responded, it deepened into something that spoke of months of restrained longing. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "I want to court you properly," Wesley said, his forehead resting against hers. "I want to do this right, Theresa. Not because of your father, not because of any debt, but because I love you and I want you to be sure of your own feelings without any complications hanging over us." "What about my father's debt?" "I am canceling it," Wesley said firmly. "All of it, as of today. Whatever he owes me is forgiven. You will stay here because you want to, or you will leave if you prefer, but either way, it will be your choice, free and clear. But that is thousands of dollars. I do not care about the money, I care about you being free to make your own decisions. I care about you knowing that anything between us is real, not born of obligation." Theresa felt a weight she had been carrying for months lift from her shoulders. "You are an extraordinary man, Wesley Crawford." He laughed softly. "I am just a rancher who has been lucky enough to have an extraordinary woman walk into his life." They sat by the creek for a long time, talking and kissing and making plans. Wesley wanted to court her for several months, to give her time to be certain of her feelings. He wanted to marry her properly, with a wedding in the church in Carlin if she wished, or a simple ceremony on the ranch if she preferred. He wanted to build her a bigger house, one with room for children someday, if she wanted them. "I want all of that," Theresa said, her heart fuller than she had ever thought possible. "But I do not need a bigger house. I just need you." As autumn painted the Nevada landscape in gold and brown, Wesley courted Theresa with old-fashioned devotion. He brought her wildflowers from the range, took her on long rides to show her every corner of his land, read to her in the evenings, and stole kisses when Rosa was not looking and clucking her tongue at them. Theresa wrote to her father, a difficult letter in which she explained that Wesley had forgiven his debt, that she was staying at the ranch by her own choice, and that she was being courted by a good man. She asked him to stop drinking, to save his business, and to try to be the father her mother had believed he could be. She did not know if he would heed her words, but she had to try. To her surprise, her father wrote back a month later. His letter was shaky but sober, full of apologies and shame. He admitted he had exaggerated the terms of Wesley's arrangement, had let his desperation and drink cloud his judgment. He was trying to stop drinking, attending temperance meetings, and working to save the mercantile. He asked for her forgiveness, and for a chance to meet Wesley properly, not as a creditor but as the man who loved his daughter. Theresa cried when she read the letter, and Wesley held her and told her that people could change, that her father deserved a chance at redemption. It was decided that her father would visit at Christmas. As winter approached, Wesley proposed properly, going down on one knee in the same spot by the creek where they had first kissed, presenting her with a simple gold ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "Theresa Sullivan, you have made me happier than I ever dreamed possible. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she said through joyful tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They married in January of 1877 in the small church in Carlin, with Rosa and her large family in attendance, Wesley's ranch hands dressed in their Sunday best, and various townspeople who had come to respect Wesley's fair dealings. Theresa's father walked her down the aisle, sober and clean-shaven, tears streaming down his face as he placed her hand in Wesley's. "Take care of her," her father whispered. "With my life," Wesley promised. The wedding breakfast was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the barn decorated with winter greenery and white ribbons. There was music and dancing and more food than Rosa had ever prepared. Theresa wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself, with lace at the collar and cuffs, and she had never felt more beautiful than when Wesley looked at her with such love and devotion in his eyes. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, both of them nervous but eager. Wesley was patient and gentle, making sure Theresa felt cherished and loved. They learned each other's bodies slowly, finding joy and pleasure in their union, and when they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Theresa knew she had found her true home. Married life suited them both. Theresa continued to help Rosa with the house, but now it was truly her house, and she took even more pride in it. She expanded her herb garden, started raising chickens, and began learning the business side of the ranch from Wesley, who valued her sharp mind and good judgment. Wesley was an attentive and loving husband, never taking her for granted, always making time for her despite the demands of the ranch. They continued their evening tradition of sitting on the porch together, talking about their day, making plans for the future, and simply enjoying each other's presence. In the spring, Theresa discovered she was pregnant. Wesley was overjoyed, immediately becoming protective and hovering, until she laughingly told him she was not made of glass and could still do her normal activities. "I just want to take care of you," he said, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "You do take care of me every single day, but I am strong, Wesley. I can carry our child and still live my life." Their son was born in December of that year, during the first snowfall of winter. The labor was long and difficult, with Rosa and a midwife from Carlin attending, while Wesley paced the kitchen wearing a path in the floorboards. When he was finally allowed into the bedroom and saw Theresa, exhausted but radiant, holding their tiny son, he broke down and wept. "He is perfect," Wesley said, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "What should we name him?" Theresa asked. They had discussed names for months but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son's small, peaceful face, Wesley said, "What about James after your mother's father?" Theresa's eyes filled with tears. She had told Wesley stories about her grandfather, a kind man who had died when she was young. James Crawford. It is perfect. As the years passed, their family grew. A daughter, Emma, arrived 2 years after James, with Theresa's blonde hair and Wesley's gray-blue eyes. Then another son, Henry, who was the image of his father. The ranch prospered, growing from 6 ranch hands to 12, expanding its grazing land and its reputation for quality cattle. Theresa's father remained sober, visiting twice a year and forming a tentative but growing relationship with his grandchildren. He eventually sold the mercantile and moved to Carlin proper, where he worked as a bookkeeper and attended church every Sunday, trying to make amends for his past mistakes. Rosa remained with them, becoming like a grandmother to the children, spoiling them with sweets and stories. As her own children grew and moved away, the Crawford family became her family, and she lived in a comfortable cottage Wesley built for her on the ranch property. The years brought challenges, as all years do. There were harsh winters and dry summers, cattle sicknesses and difficult calvings, moments of financial strain and worry. But Theresa and Wesley faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing season. One evening, nearly 10 years after Theresa had first arrived at Triple Creek Ranch, she and Wesley sat on their porch watching their 3 children play in the yard. James was teaching Emma how to rope a fence post, while little Henry toddled after them, trying to keep up with his older siblings. "Do you remember the day you arrived?" Wesley asked, his arm around Theresa's shoulders. "I remember being terrified," she admitted. "I thought my life was over, that I was being sold like property. And I remember seeing you step down from that wagon, so frightened but trying so hard to be brave, and feeling such anger at your father for putting you in that position. But also feeling something else, something I could not name at the time. What was it? Recognition, I think. Like some part of me knew you were going to change my life forever." He kissed her temple. "I was right. You gave me everything," Theresa said softly. "Freedom, respect, love, a family, a home. You told me I owed you nothing, but I owe you everything." Wesley turned her to face him, his expression serious but tender. "You owe me nothing, Theresa. Everything we have built together. You have given me just as much as I have given you, more even. You gave me a reason to build something beyond just a successful ranch. You gave me love and partnership and a family. You gave me a life worth living." She kissed him then, deep and sweet, a kiss that held a decade of love and partnership and shared struggles and joys. "Mama, Papa, come see," Emma called. "James taught me how to make a loop." They stood, hands joined, and walked down into the yard to admire their daughter's accomplishment. As Wesley helped Emma perfect her technique and Theresa scooped up Henry, who had fallen and scraped his knee, she looked around at this life they had created together. The ranch house stood solid and welcoming behind them, with the curtains she had sewn and the garden she had planted and the life they had filled it with. The land stretched out in all directions, harsh but beautiful, full of possibility. And all around her was her family, the family she had never imagined she would have when she had arrived here so many years ago as payment for a debt. But Wesley had given her the greatest gift that first day, the gift of choice, the freedom to make her own decisions and live her own life. Everything that had come after, their love, their marriage, their children, had been built on that foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection. As the sun set over Triple Creek Ranch, painting the Nevada sky in brilliant shades of gold and rose, Theresa Crawford stood with her husband's arm around her waist and her children laughing at her feet, and knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The years continued to roll by with the steady rhythm of ranch life. The children grew, each developing their own personalities and dreams. James, the eldest, showed a natural aptitude for ranching, following his father everywhere and soaking up knowledge about cattle, horses, and land management. By the time he was 15, he could handle most ranch operations as well as any of the hired hands. Emma, spirited and intelligent, loved horses above all else. She became an exceptional rider, fearless and skilled, often helping break and train new horses alongside her father. She also inherited Theresa's organizational skills and kept meticulous records of the ranch's breeding program, creating a system that significantly improved their stock quality. Henry, the youngest, was gentler than his siblings, preferring books to roping and drawing to riding, though he was competent at ranch work when needed. He loved to sketch the landscape, the animals, and his family, and his bedroom walls were covered with increasingly sophisticated drawings. Theresa supported each child's individual interests while making sure they all understood the value of hard work and family loyalty. She and Wesley had created a home filled with love and laughter, but also with clear expectations and responsibilities. The ranch continued to prosper. Wesley's reputation for honesty and quality spread throughout Nevada and into California, and buyers came from as far as San Francisco to purchase his cattle. He invested profits wisely, buying more land when it became available, improving the ranch buildings, and ensuring his workers were well paid and treated fairly. This earned him loyalty from his employees and respect from his neighbors. Theresa had become an integral part of the ranch's success, managing the household accounts, handling correspondence with buyers, and even negotiating contracts when Wesley was out on the range. She had a head for numbers that rivaled any banker's, and more than once her careful analysis had saved them from bad deals or pointed them toward profitable opportunities. She also became active in the community, helping establish a school in Carlin so that ranch families did not have to send their children away for education. She organized fundraising events, taught Sunday school at the church, and quietly helped families in need, often sending Rosa's oldest son, Miguel, who now worked as a ranch hand, to deliver anonymous parcels of food or clothing to struggling households. One spring afternoon, when Theresa was 35 years old and Wesley was 43, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was a well-dressed man on a fine horse, clearly someone of means, and he asked to speak with Wesley on a matter of business. Theresa showed him into the study while one of the ranch hands fetched Wesley from the north pasture. She served coffee and made polite conversation, learning that the man was Marcus Fletcher, a railroad executive from Sacramento. When Wesley arrived, dusty from work and looking surprised at the visit, Fletcher got straight to business. The railroad was planning to expand through northern Nevada, and they wanted to purchase right-of-way across a portion of Triple Creek Ranch. They were prepared to offer a substantial sum, more money than Wesley would make from cattle operations on that land in 20 years. Wesley listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and then told Fletcher he needed to discuss it with his wife before making any decision. Fletcher looked surprised that Wesley would consult a woman on such a matter, but agreed to return in 3 days for an answer. After Fletcher left, Wesley and Theresa sat together in the study, discussing the offer from every angle. The money would be life-changing, enough to expand the ranch significantly, to send all 3 children to the best schools in California if they wished, to secure their family's future for generations. but the proposed route would cut through some of their best grazing land and would bring the noise and disruption of railroad construction and operation. It would change the character of the ranch forever. "What do you think we should do?" Wesley asked, valuing Theresa's opinion as he always did. "I think we need to consider what we want our legacy to be," Theresa said thoughtfully. "The money would be wonderful, but we have enough. We have a successful ranch, healthy children, and a good life. Do we want to sacrifice the peace and integrity of the land for wealth we do not truly need?" Wesley nodded slowly. "I have been thinking the same thing, but I wanted to hear your thoughts. You have as much stake in this decision as I do." They talked long into the night, weighing options and considering compromises. Finally, they decided to meet with Fletcher and propose an alternative route that would skirt the edge of their property, rather than cutting through the middle. It would require the railroad to negotiate with 2 other landowners as well, but it would preserve the heart of Triple Creek Ranch while still allowing the progress of the railroad. To their surprise, Fletcher agreed to investigate the alternative route. It turned out to be feasible, and eventually the railroad came through on the modified path. Wesley and Theresa received a smaller payment than originally offered, but one that still allowed them to make improvements to the ranch while preserving the land and lifestyle they had worked so hard to build. The railroad's arrival brought changes to the region. Carlin grew from a small town into a bustling hub, with new businesses and more settlers. Some of Wesley's neighbors sold out entirely, taking railroad money and moving to California or Oregon. But Triple Creek Ranch remained, adapting to the changes while maintaining its essential character. As their children entered young adulthood, Wesley and Theresa faced new challenges. James, now 22, wanted to marry Sarah Winters, the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Wesley and Theresa gave their blessing gladly, and the young couple married in the same church where Wesley and Theresa had spoken their vows. Wesley deeded James a section of ranch land to start his own operation, though father and son continued to work closely together. Emma, at 20, shocked everyone by announcing she wanted to travel to California to study veterinary medicine. It was almost unheard of for a woman, but Theresa supported her daughter's ambitions fiercely, having learned herself that women were capable of far more than society often allowed. "If you want to be a veterinarian, then you should become one," Theresa told Emma. "Your father and I will support you in whatever way we can." Wesley agreed, though he worried about his daughter traveling so far and facing inevitable prejudice. But Emma was determined and capable, and they let her go with their blessing and financial support, knowing that holding her back would only breed resentment. Henry, at 18, surprised no one when he announced he wanted to attend art school in San Francisco. Wesley, who had once thought his only legacy would be the ranch, found himself proud to have children pursuing such diverse paths. He and Theresa visited Henry in San Francisco, saw his artwork displayed in a student exhibition, and marveled at how far their family had come from that desperate day when Theresa had arrived as payment for a debt. With the children grown and pursuing their own dreams, Wesley and Theresa found themselves alone together again for the first time in over 20 years. Rosa had retired from daily work, though she still visited often, and they had hired a younger woman, Maria, Rosa's granddaughter, to help with the household tasks. Far from being sad about the empty nest, Wesley and Theresa discovered a renewed intimacy and joy in each other's company. They took long rides together as they had when they were courting, explored parts of the ranch they had not visited in years, and spent evenings reading together by the fire. Their lives intertwined as completely as the roots of the old cottonwood trees by the creek. "We have built something good, have we not?" Wesley said one evening as they sat on the porch, now in their familiar spot that had been worn smooth by decades of use. "We have built something extraordinary," Theresa corrected. "From such an inauspicious beginning, look at what we have created. 3 wonderful children pursuing their dreams, a successful ranch, a strong marriage, a place in our community. I would never have imagined any of this that day I arrived, so frightened and angry and lost." "You were never lost," Wesley said, taking her hand. "You were just finding your way to where you were meant to be." "To you, you mean?" "To yourself first, to your own strength and capability. I just had the good fortune to be here when you discovered it." Theresa leaned her head on his shoulder, contentment settling over her like a warm blanket. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Nevada sky. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. James and Sarah had children, making Wesley and Theresa grandparents 3 times over. Emma completed her studies and returned to Nevada, becoming the first female veterinarian in the region and building a successful practice, despite initial skepticism from old-timers who did not think a woman should be doing such work. Henry's artwork gained recognition in San Francisco, and he eventually had pieces displayed in galleries throughout California. Theresa's father, now in his 70s, spent his final years living in the cottage that had once been Rosa's, cared for by the family he had nearly destroyed with his gambling and drinking. On his deathbed, he took Theresa's hand and thanked her for forgiving him a chance to know his grandchildren, for showing him that redemption was possible. "You are a far better person than I ever was," he whispered. "You taught me what not to do, and then you taught me that people can change." Both lessons had value, Theresa said, tears streaming down her face as she forgave him one final time. Rosa passed away at the age of 82, surrounded by her enormous extended family and with Theresa holding one hand and Wesley holding the other. She had been their first friend, their supporter, their family, and they mourned her deeply. The entire town of Carlin came to her funeral, a testament to the impact one generous, warm-hearted woman had made on so many lives. As Wesley and Theresa entered their 50s, they began making plans for the ranch's future. James was taking on more and more of the daily operations, and it was clear he would inherit and run Triple Creek Ranch after Wesley was gone. They set up trusts for Emma and Henry as well, ensuring all their children would be financially secure. But Wesley and Theresa were not done living yet. They traveled to San Francisco to visit Henry, to Denver to see cattle shows, even to Chicago once for a ranching convention where Wesley was invited to speak about sustainable ranching practices. Theresa accompanied him everywhere, his partner in all things, and they made each trip an adventure. One day, as they were riding out to the creek that had always been their special place, they came across a young family camped by the side of the road. The man's wagon had broken a wheel, and his wife and 2 small children looked exhausted and hungry. They were homesteaders, heading west to try to claim land under the Homestead Act, full of hope but clearly struggling. Wesley and Theresa stopped to help. Wesley and 2 of his ranch hands fixed the wagon wheel while Theresa took the family back to the ranch house, fed them a hot meal, and packed them supplies for their journey. The young mother cried with gratitude, and the father tried to offer payment, but Wesley and Theresa refused. "Someone helped me once when I needed it most," Theresa said. "Pass it forward when you can." After the family left, continuing on their way west, Wesley pulled Theresa close. "You are thinking of the day you arrived, are you not?" "I am thinking of how one act of kindness, one moment of choosing compassion over cruelty, can change everything. You could have treated me as property that day, Wesley. You had every legal and social right to do so, but you chose differently, and that choice created all of this." She gestured at the ranch, at the life they had built. "I could not have done otherwise. The moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be treasured, not used. You saw me as a person when I was being treated as an object. That gift of recognition, of basic human dignity, it changed everything." They rode to the creek and sat in their usual spot, now with decades of memories attached to it. The creek still flowed, the cottonwoods still provided shade, and the peace of the place remained unchanged despite all the years that had passed. "You have any regrets?" Wesley asked. Theresa considered the question seriously. "I regret that my father put me in such a terrible position. I regret the pain and fear of those early days, but I cannot regret the outcome. Everything hard led me here, to you, to our family, to this life. So no, I suppose I have no real regrets." "What about you?" "My only regret is that I did not meet you sooner, that we did not have even more years together, but I am greedy that way." He kissed her softly. "Every day with you has been a gift, Theresa. You turned a lonely rancher into a husband and father, a house into a home, an existence into a life worth living." "We did that together," she insisted. "Marriage is not one person saving another. It is two people choosing each other every single day, building something together that neither could create alone." As the afternoon wore on, they talked about their children, their grandchildren, their plans for the future. They reminisced about funny moments and hard times, about the growth of the ranch and the changes in the region. They made plans for the winter, for James's eldest son's upcoming birthday, for Emma's next visit. When the sun began to set, they mounted their horses and rode slowly back to the ranch house, in no hurry to end this perfect day. The ranch stretched out before them, the home they had built from nothing, the legacy they would leave behind. That evening, the family gathered for supper. James and Sarah came with their 3 children. Emma was visiting from Carlin, where she now had her veterinary office, and Henry had come home for a month between exhibitions. The dining room was full of noise and laughter and love. Theresa looked around the table at the faces of her children and grandchildren, at Wesley at the other end of the table catching her eye and smiling, at the abundance of food and the warmth of family, and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. After supper, when the dishes were cleared and the children were playing in the yard, Wesley stood and raised his glass. "I want to propose a toast," he said, and everyone quieted. 27 years ago, a young woman arrived at this ranch under circumstances that should have been tragic. But from that moment, everything changed. "Theresa, you have made my life richer beyond measure. You have given me love, partnership, children, and purpose. You have helped build this ranch into something we can all be proud of. You have taught our children to be strong, honest, and compassionate. You have made me a better man than I ever would have been without you." Theresa felt tears prick her eyes as Wesley continued. "But more than all of that, you have shown me what true love means. Not possession, not obligation, but freely given devotion and partnership. So I want to toast my wife, my partner, my best friend, and the great love of my life, to Theresa." "To Theresa," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. "And to Wesley," Theresa added, her voice thick with emotion, "who showed me on the darkest day of my life that kindness and honor still existed in the world. Who gave me freedom and then asked me to choose him. Who has spent nearly 3 decades proving every single day that I made the right choice. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." They kissed to the applause and good-natured teasing of their family, and the evening continued with music and stories, and the comfortable chaos of a family truly content. Later that night, alone in their bedroom, Wesley and Theresa prepared for bed with the easy familiarity of long marriage. Wesley brushed out Theresa's hair, now streaked with gray as he had done countless times over the years. She leaned back against him, her eyes closed, savoring the gentle touch. "I meant what I said at dinner," Wesley murmured. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though I came as payment for a debt, you came as a woman trapped by circumstances beyond her control. You stayed as my partner and my love. That is all that matters." They settled into bed, Theresa's head on Wesley's shoulder, his arm around her, their bodies fitting together as perfectly as they had for nearly 3 decades. "Wesley," Theresa said softly. "Yes, my love, thank you for everything. For seeing me, for respecting me, for loving me, for building this beautiful life with me." "The thanks go both ways, Theresa. Always." They fell asleep as they had every night for 27 years in each other's arms, exactly where they belonged. The years continued to pass gently. Wesley and Theresa grew older, their children thrived, their grandchildren grew, and the ranch continued to prosper under James's capable management with Wesley's guidance. They celebrated 50th birthdays, and then 60th, silver anniversaries and the weddings of grandchildren. When Theresa was 60 years old and Wesley was 68, they took one last ride out to the creek. Wesley's joints were stiffer now, and Theresa's hair was completely silver, but they still rode every week when weather permitted, still cherished their private time together. They sat in their usual spot, watching the water flow past as it had for all these decades. "I love you," Wesley said, as he had said thousands of times before. "I love you," Theresa replied, as she always did and always would. They sat in peaceful silence, holding hands, surrounded by the land they had cultivated and the love they had nurtured, knowing that whatever time they had left, they would spend it together. The story of how Theresa Sullivan had been sent as payment for her father's debt, and how Wesley Crawford had whispered that she owed him nothing, became a family legend passed down through generations. It was a story about choosing kindness over cruelty, respect over possession, love over obligation. It was a story about second chances and the power of treating people with dignity. But most of all, it was a love story, one that had started in fear and debt, but had blossomed into something beautiful and enduring. It was proof that even from the darkest circumstances, joy could grow. That one good choice, one compassionate act, could change not just one life but generations to come. And in the end, sitting by their creek with their hands joined and their hearts full, Wesley and Theresa knew that they had built something that would outlast them both. A legacy of love and respect and partnership that would echo through their family for all the years to come. They had taken an impossible situation and created from it a life beyond their wildest dreams, and they were grateful for every single moment they had been given together.